The first warning sign wasn't loud or dramatic. It slipped by quietly, wrapped in reassurance. A bruise here, a swollen eye there, each explained away as normal childhood play. Toys on the floor, a fall while running. Roughhousing that went a little too far. From the very beginning, visible injuries were framed as ordinary accidents, and that framing shaped how everyone else saw what was happening. Before we continue, hit the subscribe button and turn on your notifications so you can get first-hand updates on this story and others like it as new details emerge. At first, the explanation sounded reasonable. Children do get hurt, and accidents are part of growing up. Caregivers consistently described injuries as isolated incidents, small mishaps that didn't require much concern. The problem wasn't any single explanation. It was how often the same type of explanation was used. Each injury was treated as its own event, disconnected from the loss, which prevented anyone from stepping back and asking a bigger question. Why does this keep happening? As more people became involved, cracks began to show. Timelines didn't line up. One adult would say an injury happened early in the week, while another placed it days later. Witness statements conflicted with private messages, and later interviews didn't always match what had been said before. These weren't minor memory lapses. The differences were significant enough to raise doubts about how accurately events were being recalled, or whether accounts were being adjusted over time. Private messages became especially revealing. In real-time conversations, adults sometimes acknowledged concern about repeated bruising, even while outwardly presenting everything as normal. There was a sense of unease in these messages, paired with reassurance that things were fine or not serious. This contrast mattered. It suggested that worries existed but were kept behind closed doors, never fully acted upon. One injury, in particular, highlighted the confusion: Lilly's black eye. It was obvious and visible, yet adults couldn't agree on when it appeared. Some said it showed up after a weekend at home. Others believed it was already there earlier. Teachers recalled noticing it at times that didn't match caregiver accounts. A black eye doesn't appear and disappear overnight without trace, so these conflicting versions became difficult to ignore. The injury turned into a symbol of the larger problem, clear signs of harm surrounded by unclear explanations. Jack's situation raised similar concerns. He had facial bruising on more than one occasion, each time accompanied by vague or shifting stories. Sometimes the cause was a fall. Other times it was play. Occasionally, no clear explanation was offered at all. The lack of detail stood out. When injuries happen repeatedly but explanations stay broad and nonspecific, it becomes harder to believe they are simply accidents. Eventually, investigators stopped looking at each injury on its own. When the incidents were laid out together, a pattern emerged. Recurrent injuries across both children changed the entire interpretation of the case. What once looked like bad luck now looked like something more serious. Repetition matters. The more often injuries occur, the less likely it is that coincidence alone explains them. Because personal accounts were unreliable, investigators leaned heavily on objective records. School notes, attendance logs, and medical documentation provided something solid to work with. Teachers' observations helped establish when injuries were noticed, sometimes contradicting household timelines. Medical records revealed when treatment was sought and when it wasn't, raising questions about why visible injuries didn't always lead to professional evaluation. These records also show that concerns hadn't appeared out of nowhere. Prior school and child welfare reports had already flagged bruising and possible neglect. None of those reports alone may have seemed urgent enough to trigger major intervention, but together they painted a picture of ongoing concern that had never fully been resolved. Adding to the complexity were allegations of substance misuse and instability within the household. While not proof of harm on their own, these factors increased risk and provided context. An unstable environment can affect supervision, decision-making, and how injuries are handled. Investigators treated these allegations carefully, but they couldn't be ignored. Perhaps the most damaging issue of all was accountability. Responsibility for the children shifted between adults, making it difficult to determine who was present when injuries occurred. Without clear accountability, timelines blurred even further, and the children's experiences became harder to reconstruct. In the end, this case is less about one injury and more about what happens when warning signs are normalized. When bruises become routine, when explanations stop being questioned, and when concern stays private instead of becoming action, children are left unprotected. The lesson is simple and unsettling. Patterns tell the truth long before any single story does. And when adults fail to recognize those patterns, or choose not to, silence becomes part of the harm.